Hello, and thank you for watching my presentation about food security in the Greater Phoenix metro area. 42% of Phoenix residents live in a neighborhood where at least one-third of its inhabitants resides more than a mile from a grocery store with access to fresh food. Conversations with individuals experiencing varying levels of food insecurity at St. Vincent de Paul's urban farms and dining halls in the Greater Phoenix metro area conducted for this research project revealed many insights about issues of food justice in this region. This research produced an introductory management plan to improve food access and food sovereignty by working to understand the identities of those most in need and elevating their influential power. This project started with broad intentions which were narrowed during the research process. Though I began with initial goals to include the opinions of a significant number of participants, I ended with results sourced from lower quantity but higher quality research. I believe the numerous discussions I had with my main research participant, Jesus, as well as the in-depth conversations I was lucky to experience with younger children and families experiencing food insecurity, effectively exemplify the principles of participatory action research, or PAR. Quote, PAR focuses on social change that promotes democracy and challenges inequality, is context-specific, often targeted on the needs of a particular group, is an iterative cycle of research, action, and reflection. End quote. Institute of Development Studies. The interactions I was fortunate to experience while conducting this research helped me understand and promote the concepts represented in this definition. The majority, if not all, of the research participants in this project are not fortunate enough to have their voices equitably heard without others going to seek them first. Hearing the stories and learning the experiences of those most directly involved with food insecurity reveals the most effective solutions to the issues at hand. PAR principles boil down to awareness of one's own positionality as a researcher and the positionality or identity of research participants. In reference to PAR principles in the classroom, David Cox explains them well when he says, quote, by respecting the unique life experiences that each student brings into the classroom, by asserting that the broadest possible set of experiences is crucial to help each of us understand the topic at hand as completely possible, we empower all students as knowledge makers. End quote. Respect for positionality is essential in any research endeavor toward justice because it proliferates equitable and scientific mindsets. This is the central thematic takeaway from this project. More specifically, the mock introductory management plan shown throughout this presentation is a possible representation of the real results which could come from studies like this conducted at larger and broader scales. The shelters, work programs, housing programs, health services, dining halls, kitchens, meal distribution programs, and urban farms operated by St. Vincent de Paul throughout the Greater Phoenix metro area are genuine efforts to reduce food insecurity, houselessness, and other injustices caused by inequitable income distribution throughout the region. Many of these programs rely heavily on the time and labor of volunteers in their operation. Individuals from all walks of life gather in SVDP's kitchens, dining halls, farms, and other spaces to create communal spaces of giving and support. I felt very lucky to develop lasting relationships with many kind and caring people while working with the Urban Farms program. This sense of community is an essential part of changing how we approach issues of societal injustice. Monica Montgomery and Mahana Vaughn say that quote, community-based collaborative management, or co-management, is the sharing of management authority and responsibility, often between local communities and government agencies. End quote. Encompassing employees, volunteers, and those in need, the communities developed through SVDP programs aim to manage issues of societal injustice through shared experience. When guests of the shelter or clients of other SVDP programs volunteer to help, through engagement with these communities of giving and support, they are provided access to skills and resources which can potentially alleviate the injustices they experience. My friend Jesus is one such individual who I feel very lucky to have gotten the chance to know. Jesus works on an SVDP urban farm multiple days a week for hours at a time. He was told by a friend that he could come to this farm and dining hall and receive food for free. He chose to walk onto the farm and offer his services to assist us, instead of sitting down in the dining hall as hot meals were being prepared. Jesus predominantly speaks Spanish, but he understands English with near fluency. At first, it was not obvious that he was experiencing any level of homelessness, but through conversation he revealed he was living without shelter less than a mile away from the farm. He said he tried utilizing the services of a local shelter, but that he did not feel safe or supported in the ways that would be most effective for him. Working on the farm not only feels familiar to Jesus due to his upbringing growing food with his grandmother, but it also gives him a sense of pride in feeling that he has earned what he eats. Jesus' humility is clearly abundant. He does not want to burden anyone more than he feels is necessary. Jesus grew up in the Mexican state of Sonora, near Hermosillo. He immigrated to the United States over 15 years ago and has a daughter who lives with her husband and children. When I asked why he doesn't live with them, Jesus explained that he simply loves life and sees every day as a gift, no matter his situation. It's hard to tell if Jesus is putting on a mask when he says he doesn't mind living without permanent shelter, but I entirely believe that he finds happiness in every situation. Jesus wants to provide for himself as much as he can, and is quite successful at finding opportunities such as the urban farm to exchange work for food. Over the course of this research project, the lead volunteer at the farm helped Jesus engage in a more formal work program with St. Vincent de Paul. This will provide him with income to more freely choose how to actualize his own personal food sovereignty. Jesus is open to some of the more conventional forms of assistance, which help him assimilate into a societal framework designed by a predominant white patriarchal government and culture derived from a European colonist principles. But he would also prefer to be allowed to live in ways which do not fit in with these norms. Jesus was not inclined to provide specifics for how exactly he would like to achieve his own personal sense of stability in his life. Yet, his hesitance brings me to a significant conclusion. As a society, we need to allow for more informal ways of living, spaces where people can live their lives in the way they see fit, without a non-communal authoritative body telling them how to do so. In fights for the rights and sovereignty of indigenous peoples, arguments are made for introducing informality to management of natural resources through indigenous methods. Native Hawaiian Kahana people are helping to reverse the damage done to local fisheries by state managers through their communally-based konohiki fishing methodologies. Quote, "This joint learning by doing process offers a promising institutional framework through which communities can exercise greater influence while enhancing the adaptive capacity of coastal ecological systems." End quote. Montgomery and Vaughan, 2018. Allowing local families to informally operate fisheries in the ways they see fit strengthens their communities and the health of their natural resources. Though indigenous rights are extremely important in their own right, this concept of informal management has immense power in other spheres of social justice. As researchers, managers, and actors of change toward righting social injustices, we don't need to actively take part in how people conduct their daily lives. We simply need to make the space for others to do so. The first goal in a mock introductory food insecurity management plan I've created is to create more spaces for people to live with less formality. We must work directly with local groups to implement research projects and management plans based on the actual wants and needs of community members. The second goal in my management plan I derived from a few experiences I had with Jesus and other farm volunteers. These conversations all shared the quality of exhibiting a distinct lack of awareness of positionality. During one discussion I had while eating some fruit and sandwiches after a hard day of work on the farm, the course of small talk turned to the subject of illegal immigration. The lead volunteer espoused her frustration at the poverty and crime she claimed is associated with Mexican immigrants. I immediately felt embarrassed and frustrated that she would bring this up at all, let alone in front of Jesus. I asked her to change the subject, and she immediately realized the errors of her ways. She turned to discussing the positives of America being able to accept Ukrainian refugees, and then moved on to other topics. Clearly, the lead volunteer displayed several aspects of her own positionality and did not recognize how those opinions were not reflective of the identities of the others near her. Another conversation involved a different volunteer while eating at a local Mexican restaurant. She asked with a half-joking tone, "Is the stuff here safe to eat? Where do you think they get it from?" Not much came from that remark, and Jesus kindly brushed it off. But again, I felt frustration that someone would be so unaware of their own positionality in a diverse group setting. The last experience that informed my sustainability management goal involved my own lack of awareness of positionality during the same meal. There were many hot sauces and salsas available at the Mexican restaurant, and Jesus pointed to a bottle and told me to try it. Out of the several sauces made by the restaurant, Jesus chose the inexpensive mass-produced sauce simply because it was the hottest. He told me that he and his grandmother grew the hottest peppers. He always tried to recreate that flavor by finding the hottest sauces he could. I assumed Jesus would prefer what I thought of as a more, quote unquote, authentic sauce. But what was most authentic to him was simply the spiciest sauce he could find. If I had said something about my assumption, perhaps I never would have learned what Jesus actually thought. What I gained from these experiences is a recognition that awareness of positionality must be a central goal in any attempt to right social injustice. The unbiased voices of those at the heart of any issue must be the starting point for research and management practices. As stated earlier in this presentation, principles of PAR symbolize a recognition of positionality from all angles. Therefore, the second goal in my food insecurity management plan is to endorse methodologies of PAR with a prioritization on awareness of the positionality and identity of research participants. The first step to achieving this should be integration of PAR ideas into all levels of education. Despite these reminders of positionality, the meal at the Mexican restaurant was quite enjoyable. I learned that Jesus grew up eating enchiladas almost every night. Learning of his love of growing and eating spicy peppers was also a great insight. His story of growing food at home represented an actualization of food sovereignty shared by others whom I was fortunate enough to interact with in the course of this research. The final goal for my management plan comes from this conversation with Jesus as well as an event I was lucky enough to be able to attend. One of the SVDP dining halls puts on a weekly family meal. At this family meal, a program called the Dream Center is held, where kids are led through activities and homework sessions before and after mealtime. I was not lucky enough to be able to attend the session, where Miss Colorado was in attendance, shown up at the top left. While attending the Dream Center event, I got the chance to have some long conversations with both kids and parents. I had a lot of fun, but more importantly, I heard the stories and ideas of numerous people from all walks of life and of all ages experiencing food insecurity. I led an activity planting seeds in small buckets of soil. Both kids and adults seemed to love it, and I ran out of supplies by the end of the event. Nearly every time a seed was picked from the few choices I presented to guests, I was told a story about a family garden which held great importance to them. I heard several stories about growing amazingly flavorful peppers, tomatoes, herbs, and other plants with elder family members. Agricultural tradition and the ability to grow one's own food, even on a small scale, is clearly important to many people. I was inspired to learn that both kids and adults see growing food at home as a realistic means to achieving a level of food sovereignty. The third and final goal for my mock introductory management plan is to maintain and improve familial agricultural knowledge. An initial step toward this goal should be that, in addition to providing assistance through food stamp programs, commodities, and donations, the organizations which are fighting food insecurity should provide resources and space for communities to grow their own food. In summary, this management plan is very rudimentary, but the process of developing it provided me with extensive knowledge and valuable experiences. Thoughtful conversation is a truly effective way to genuinely understand a person. Understanding and utilizing the ideas of others is the essence of our nature as social creatures. We must all work together with equitable influence and representation to solve any issue of food justice, food insecurity specifically. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.